Hey everybody, Nicky Skevich here with Daily Fantasy Winners. It is the next edition of Tee to Green here, and it is going to be for the Valero Texas Open. And this is a tournament that is down in San Antonio, Texas, specifically at the TPC course San Antonio. And so this is going to be a week, again, where I will recommend that limiting your exposure might be a great idea, limiting the amount of lineups or just bankroll you want to invest here for this tournament. It's a very high variance tournament. There are a couple of reasons for it. Number one, statistically, in terms of what shows up here, it has almost a little bit of everything. Strokes gained approaching the green, strokes gained around the green, and strokes gained putting all kind of show up here a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Nothing in particular of those three stand out. It's just strokes gained off the tee is the one that doesn't show up, which is a little bit fascinating because if you do take a look at this golf course, it is actually one of the longest and toughest courses on tour. It is a par 72 course, to be fair, so it's not like the longest. It's like top 5, top 10, somewhere in there like that. It does tip out at 7,435 yards, but it is one of the toughest scoring courses on the entire PGA Tour. In fact, if you exclude major championships, it is the toughest in scoring average since 2014. There's a little bit of variance in that with some weather that happened in 2015, but still, it's one of the toughest. And as far as sometimes I'll go back and look and just see how I've done, just prediction-wise or picks-wise in general over the last few years since I started doing this content. And this is a tournament that, I've just found that it's just really wide variance, not just for me, but for everybody. The one year that I did well with this tournament was actually 2015, if I remember this correctly. And that is because the weather had a huge impact on that, and we played toward a tee time advantage in that given year. If you do take a look at if you go back at that year, you will see a ton of first-round scores in the 80s, actually, believe it or not, from Thursday morning. And what it was is just that for the Thursday morning tee time wave, there were like 40-mile-an-hour winds, and the course was already dry and firm and fast and all as it was, and that just made it significantly harder. So I don't remember what the exact scoring average was, but there were a lot of scores like literally in the 80s. Like if you broke 80, that was actually like a decent score Thursday morning. And then the winds just died down from like 40 miles an hour all the way to 5 to 10 miles an hour by the afternoon. And it's just like that's like extremely rare, but that's a huge advantage to have. And this is a full 150 person field, so there's like a very clear distinction between morning and afternoon tee times here at this event. And then Friday was just like normal weather. And so basically if you played Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, you had a big edge, and so there was like a little bit of an edge to gain there. But other than that, there really hasn't been anything, I think, in my opinion, really to dissect, other than play to recent form and try and play the ownership game with GPPs, but that's just standard for every single week. So that's why I just say it. It might be a week to do that. As far as weather, just for this week, before we get into the top golfers, I will say I do think there is a chance that Thursday afternoon, Friday morning could be an advantage again this year. I'm doing this on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm slightly behind schedule this week. Every piece of technology I touch seems to not work right now. So in any case, Thursday afternoon, Friday morning is going to be potentially a slight advantage. The short version is that, this could easily change with the way weather changes these days, but the way it looks like is that the wind will be around 10 miles an hour, give or take, in Thursday morning, and then it'll go up to 15 Thursday afternoon, or it might even it'll say rough. It might even be roughly the same. It might be 10 to 15 in the morning, and then 15 miles an hour or something like that in the afternoon. And then Friday morning, it's supposed to only be 5 to 10 miles an hour, at the most. And then around noon, it says there's supposed to be this huge spike, and it goes up to 15 to 20 miles an hour. So obviously this could change, and it's really tough predicting wind, even if it's only 24 hours out when it exactly hits. And we're talking about just a couple hours of differential here sometimes. But that is an advantage to potentially play for, is to go with the guys Thursday afternoon, Friday morning. Again, we'll check in with this again on Wednesday evening and try to use your best decision making possible there. And I'll probably post a little bit about that in the forum as well. So anyways, that's kind of my advice from that front. But let's get into the top golfers here. It's going to be the same thing. Take a look at the top, I guess it's 5 guys that are above 10K. But because this is actually another week, kind of like the RBC last week, where I think I like the 9K and the 8K range a lot more than the 10K. It's another pretty weak field, relatively speaking, to the other PGA Tour tournaments. So I will, I'll go through a couple of the 9K guys as well here as we move on down, and then I'll touch on my few favorite plays in the forum later on. Sergio Garcia, $12,000, definitely deserves to be the favorite. The one thing you may not know about Sergio just is that he actually assisted or helped Greg Norman in designing this golf course. Norman is the architect, but Sergio had a hand in helping him. To what extent, I'm not 100% sure. But he did help with designing this golf course. And so of anybody playing in this field, Sergio probably knows it about just as well as anybody. The one thing I should throw in here, if you're looking at course history, by the way, they moved this tournament here to AT&T San Antonio in 2010. It was at a different course before then, and so the scoring condition, or not the conditions, just the scoring averages did were a lot tougher since 2010 once they moved this tournament here. And so I'm just bringing this up if you see somebody's amazing course history, but all their good results are before 2010. Like, there's a reason for that. I mean, A, they were probably in their prime back then, but B, also it's just, you know, they were playing an easier course. So, but for Sergio, definitely the highest floor, definitely the highest ceiling, I think, of all the golfers in the field. You know, 12K is not obviously a very exciting thing to pay for with Sergio, but he is the best player, so it makes perfect sense. I think it's fine GPPs. I don't know if I'd go the cash route on him. There's so much value here in the 8-9K range. I think you're a little bit better off maybe going down that road just than paying 12K for Sergio, because then you're just kind of condensed in that 7K range. And I actually like quite a few plays in the 8K range. So again, I'll touch on that later on, but I think Sergio's perfectly fine though in GPPs. There's no red flags for me to really bring up about him. Matt Kuchar here at $11,400. I was kind of a little bit anti-Kuchar here this year, only just because his approach, his whole tee to green game has been off, but really the approach game had been off, and the putter had been saving him. But over the last few weeks, that's kind of flipped back to being. The putter's cooled off for some regression like we expected, but Kuchar's also heated up with the tee to green game, and the approach game in particular has been much better here over the last few weeks. You know, the Masters was better, but they don't do strokes gain statistics, so it was a little hard to tell going off the data of it, but just by watching him and looking at, you know, greens and rake and proximity to the hole and all that, you could tell pretty quickly that, like, Kuchar was, like, getting back on track, and he certainly showed it last week at Harbour Town. So I think Kuchar's fine. Obviously, his floor is extremely high. I don't like paying $11,400 for him, especially on a golf course that's this long, although driving distance doesn't show up here. It's just, it's kind of funny here just seeing a golf course this long, that just, like, you know, driving distance or just strokes gained off the tee doesn't show up here much. It's just kind of a weird concept, but it's not my favorite price to pay for Matt Kuchar. But the strokes gained approaching the green is looking better, so I guess I can't really say he's like a terrible play by any means. I would just much rather pay $600 more for Sergio personally. That would be my lean there. Charlie Hoffman at $10,900. His course history here, I'm sure a lot of people know this by now. His course history is pretty darn good. Pulling it up right now, Charlie Hoffman, he has played here 12 times. He has made the cut every single time in those appearances. And then if you do take a look at it a little closer, Charlie Hoffman, he finished tied for 40th here last year. He finished tied for 70th back in 2008, and it was at a different course anyways. Of the other 10 times, he has finished no worse than tied for 13th. That is really good. And he won here in 2016. He has several other top 5s, top 10s, everything like that. So Hoffman's course history is really good, but it's just so odd to think that given that there really isn't a huge statistical correlation for this golf course, and Charlie Hoffman isn't. I mean, he's usually a better tee to green player than short game guy, generally speaking. But it's a little odd that you know, just there isn't something like this. Isn't like a Luke Donald Harbour Town type of thing. Minus Luke Donald didn't do well like last week, and good on you guys for not playing him if you did. But yeah, it's just a little bit odd seeing that with Hoffman. So I'm sure there's some variance within this. But that the course history is really good. I don't know how the ownership's going to play out. Ownership is really difficult to predict right now in these weaker fields because the pricing is so bad right now between the 7 and 8K range, and not a ton of people want to pay up unless there's something super obvious. So it's hard to see Charlie Hoffman's ownership being extremely high, but given how good his course history is, it could be a little bit higher. I don't particularly love Hoffman like more than I don't like or hate Hoffman by comparison to Matt Kuchar. I'd rather play Sergio than Hoffman. I like Hoffman more than Ryan Moore. I'll touch on Ryan Moore in a second here. It's just the pricing is I don't know, 10.9K for Charlie Hoffman. Again, like I say, it's not worth it to me overall. I wouldn't blame you if you played him. It would just be one of those things where I'd probably look elsewhere, especially if you're only making a couple of lineups. Way more into the balanced salary method. And look, and in these weaker fields with the way the pricing structure has been on DraftKings, and you guys can just take a look at the leaderboard last week of the RBC when we had Kodiara win in that playoff over Siwoo Kim. Then we had DeChambeau, Luke List, Billy Horschel, Webb Simpson, Patrick Cantlay, Ian Poulter, blah, 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 Bill Haas, Streelman, Kisner, Hadley, Ben On. These are all the guys that finished, in the top 10, or I guess, top 13, I guess, technically. But these are all guys that were, 7, 8, 9K players, I think. I don't think any one of those guys was 10K or more. So this is why I said, like last week, I just think there's better value there to be had there with some lower ownership guys in those ranges. There's just so many crazy, ridiculous, absurd prices, and so it's kind of the same thing this week. So just trying to make that clear. As far as Ryan Moore goes, just too expensive. I just would not pay that price for Ryan Moore. His stats aren't even like that appealing this year, tee to green wise. Where is it? He's 75th in approaching the green, and strokes gained putting wise, he's about where he should be. He's definitely running hot and around the green. I don't know how sustainable that is for Ryan Moore, and so I just wouldn't pay the price for him. It's not my favorite play. Moving down here, though, I will touch on a few 9K guys. Adam Scott, I'm pretty much going to recommend him every single week until that putter comes back more to where it should be. His tee to green game is fantastic still right now, and then his strokes gained putting should be regressing positively. Just to clear up on Adam Scott, he is right now 5th in tee to green, 26th off the tee, 12th in approaching the green. He's actually 15th in around the green. That would be the one regression thing negatively that's kind of shown up for Scott. He does have a good chipping game. It's just 15th usually. It's not sustainable to be that good. But 194th in strokes gained putting, he's not that bad. He's not a top game putter, but he's not 194th bad. So I do expect some better results here to come for Scott in the very near future. And really, there is not a better time for it to happen than now when we're talking about a weaker field. I think this is a really good spot for Adam Scott. Kevin Chappell here, 9,300. That is a really good price for Chappell, actually, considering the strength of this field. But I'll tell you what, Chappell, since he withdrew with that back issue from the WGC match play, he's missed 2 cuts in a row. The Masters is a little bit understandable, but missing the cut of the RBC is not. That's not good. Not for somebody of Kevin Chappell's caliber. And and obviously, if you watch Kevin Chappell at the Masters, he was not. His ball striking was pretty darn bad. It wasn't just like he missed every single putt. So I would just say I think it's going to be a common thing for people to avoid Chappell here, and he will be probably lower owned, so it is kind of a nice little buy low spot, I guess, if you will, potentially. But because his huge strength is the approach game and the ball striking, and it's very clear that that's what's been going since his back issue at the WGC match play, I think it's fine just to fade him and just for whatever reason. His odds per dollar here is actually at a flat 4.0 here at 9,300. That's a little fascinating, actually. Maybe he will be a little bit higher owned than I'm giving him credit for. But we'll see. But yeah, not my favorite play just because of what I just said. Billy Horschel, 9,100. I do not pay that. No, I would not do that. FanDuel is another story because, as you see, there is no difference here between obviously they're 9,100 on both sites, or Billy Horschel is, and so obviously that's a really good value from a FanDuel perspective. So FanDuel is different, but for DraftKings, I would definitely not pay 9,100. That's a preposterous price to pay for him. I know he finished tied for 5th or whatever it was last week, but he has a significantly lower floor than pretty much almost all the guys around him, in my opinion. I think the reason why he is priced this expensive on DraftKings is because he's had a few really good finishes at this tournament. Let me pull it up here just so you guys have that information. Billy Horschel has played in this event 7 times. He has made the cut 5 times, and of 3 of those, he's finished 3rd, tied for 3rd, and tied for 4th. So that's probably where it's coming from. But he also has 2 missed cuts, tied for 74th and a 75th. So, and these are all, since 2010 when the tournaments have been at this golf course. So, again, just some wide variance here for Billy Horschel, and just too expensive. Not worth it to me there at 9,100. Brandt Snedeker, I think, is at a great a buy point here on DraftKings. I don't think he's going to get a ton of play here, but just because you see the odds per dollar here, he hasn't actually even had a top 10 in this season. I think that's just going to turn, some people away. And there's a fair amount of good plays down here, just kind of like right below him in the upper 8K range. But I'll tell you what I really liked about Snedeker is his approach game is really coming on strong. It was a little weak it was a little bit off to start the year, much actually like Matt Kuchar's was. Obviously, Kuchar had better results and a higher floor than Snedeker. That's pretty obvious, but Snedeker's approach game is really starting to come around a lot more, and his putter actually has regressed already within the last few weeks. Yeah, he's basically putting as he should be. He is at a .362 here in 2018, and we predict him at a .31, so he's right there. So that's good that the approach game's coming around and there's no negative regression expected with the putter. He should be low owned. 9K is not that expensive, and Snedeker obviously, as many of you know, is one of the top. I mean, he's not elite top 5 player obviously, but he is definitely more of the Charlie Hoffman, Ryan Moore. Really right there with Matt Kuchar at oftentimes too here, even just in the last few years. Snedeker is that good usually when he's been at the peak of his game. So I think you're getting a really nice spot here for Snedeker actually in GPPs to give him a roll here. And so anyways, that's it for this video. It's pretty quick this week, obviously. I'll touch on some of my favorite plays, 8K, 7K, 6K below. I don't know if there's going to be Tee to Green next week, only because the Zurich Classic is a team event now, which I actually really enjoy watching. I think there should be more non-stroke play events on the PGA Tour, generally speaking, and it doesn't have to be significantly more, but we just get into this whole thing of it's 72 holes of stroke play on almost every single week, and I just think there's it's if you belong to a local country club or just play at a muni course all the time, they always have different kinds of tournaments, like best balls, best shots, skins games, all those types of things. And not to say you can incorporate all that really easily into the PGA Tour, but I think there's some more creative ways the PGA Tour could incorporate some more non-stroke play events. So I'm really looking forward to the Zurich Classic. But the reason why I bring this up though is just because I don't think there was a DraftKings event for it last year, FanDuel event, just because it was a different format. I might be wrong on that, but I don't think there was a DFS event for it. It was just Euro Tour. And I'm assuming there won't be this year, but DraftKings surprised us with the WGC match play, so maybe there will be. But yeah, so if it's a team event and there's no DFS events, obviously no Tee to Green next week. And even if there is a DFS event next week for it, I might just do something on the forum and pass on the Tee to Green video next week. I've got a busy week here coming up, and would rather do the anyways, we'll see if I have the time. We'll see if we get to it. But anyways, that's it for this video though. So thanks for watching. I'm at Nicky Skevich on Twitter. Daily Fantasy Winners is on Twitter, at DFantasyWinners as usual. And thanks again to all the subscriptions and likes, of course, to the YouTube channel as well. All right, thanks guys. Good luck.